Welcome to the Agent of Wealth podcast with Mark Bautis from Bautis Financial. In this podcast, Mark helps guide you towards financial freedom, ensure you never run out of money, and create a balance in life that prioritizes what is most important to you. Join us for this journey as Mark draws from years of expertise and guest experts to solve the multiple wealth building challenges involved in your financial life.
Welcome back to the Agent of Wealth podcast. This is your co-host, John Williams. Today, we're diving into an industry that's really taken off, no pun intended, the drone business. From photography to inspections to logistics, drones are reshaping how work gets done across multiple industries. And for entrepreneurs, it represents an opportunity. So today, joining us, Damon Darnall, the drone boss. Damon is a pioneer in the drone space with decades of experience ranging from racing records to innovations in event marketing. He serves as NASA's Unmanned Traffic Management Board, founded the Sky Network, the largest organization of professional drone experts, and has trained more than 25,000 people to get their commercial drone license. He's also helped over 10,000 entrepreneurs launch successful drone businesses. So Damon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I am really excited to I just think the idea of drones is just taken off so much. My experience with them is I've bought several for my sons, just little mini drones, and they just love it. And it's actually a lot of fun for us. We've broken quite a few too. It sounds like you've been involved with drones since the 70s, which I didn't even know they were a thing back in the 70s. But with that said, maybe you could share a little bit about your journey and what first drew you to the world of drones.
Yeah. And drones have been around forever. Well, I say forever. Actually, the first patent in the United States was held by Nikola Tesla for a drone back in 1898. So drones have always kind of led the forefront of aviation. In fact, there's an organization called the AMA, which is the American Modeling Association, and essentially they're what the FAA is to drones, but they were created 22 years prior to the FAA even being a thought. So it was pretty cool. And they adopted a lot of the rules that they had set up around aviation and airspace, and then quickly realized, hey, this is way different when we have people in them than what we're doing here. But yeah, so it's been around for a long time. And I was introduced to it in 1976, and it was just love at first flight type of deal. And I was just enamored by it, and I just the whole idea of them. And so it just kind of just stuck, and it grew and grew, and I got into competitions and competing, and like you mentioned, I was able to set a couple world records, which was pretty cool, and got to work with some really unique agencies and opportunities, and as it grew up. But the whole challenge was this industry was pretty much a self-regulating industry, because it took literally thousands of flight hours before you were good enough to do anything at a commercial level where you could get paid anything at all. And so it didn't really start developing until just really this last decade, about 10 years ago. And with the invention of these microaccelerometers and microgyros and essentially all the things that are in the cell phones, that when you turn the phone one direction to the other, it knows which direction it's going. And that really brought the technology to the forefront. And drones went from being incredibly difficult to fly to ridiculously easy to fly. If you invest the money to a little bit mid-range drones that have all the sensors and all the stuff on them. And so it's really just kind of opened up all kinds of doors. So in fact, Precedence Research just released their newest study, and they're showing that right now we're around the $20 billion mark annually in the commercial drone side, what we're seeing. And that's going to grow over the next several years to $1.5 trillion on this commercial sector. So it's pretty, and that's not government stuff. That's not, worldwide. That's here in the U.S. And it's just a massive opportunity. It's one of the only things I've ever seen in my lifetime, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity that normal people can get involved with. It doesn't require hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars to get started. You can get started with a $1,000 drone and go out and earn a pretty good income.
I'll never forget the first time I got like I said, my son's one of these little mini drones, and I was shocked at how accurate just a little tap on the controls and how very steady they were. And this was a $50 one. I can only imagine how accurate that gets down the road. You mentioned commercial versus government, and I think there's a lot of talk about this space in the government. When did it? You said you got into it in the '70s. Was it already something the government was using?
Yeah. There were programs and there were things back then where really probably in the mid '80s and the late '80s is when it really started developing from there. But it was still kind of in its infancy stage compared to what it is now. But we're seeing, like, even if you follow any of the stuff with the Ukraine and all the stuff over there, I mean, you can pretty much just make these little homemade drones and go out there and do all kinds of crazy stuff with them. So, there are pros and cons to all of this stuff, right? If you have a lawnmower and if you don't respect it, then, bad things could happen. Same thing with a knife or a fork or whatever. But there's tons of good things and more stuff that's coming out. Just on the non-military side, on the commercial side, we're seeing the FAA has identified about 300 different vertical markets of ways that basically drones can help people, help companies, and people can build businesses around them. Everything from doing Hollywood cinematography to doing aerial funerals where we're spreading ashes to agriculture and search and rescue, nuclear power plant inspections, cell phone towers, all that stuff. And the real world benefits are pretty cool. Usually we get to help companies make more money, save money, introduce efficiencies, and usually save lives if that's applicable. But even on something as simple as like a golf course, we can fly over a golf course and we can scan the golf course and map it, and we can tell them where they're watering too much, where they're not watering enough, where they're over fertilizing, where they're under fertilizing. And all that sounds cool, but the real world benefit for them is we save the average golf course about 16 to 18 million gallons of wasted water a year because they just overwater everything. And we save them around $200,000 in wasted fertilizer every year because they just overfertilize everything. And then, of course, all that washes off into the community and pollutes it and all that. So then there's just lots of benefits around it.
I realize I have to apologize. I took the conversation early into a dark place there with the question about fence.
No worries.
But yeah, it's very interesting. Like that was kind of my first like experience with hearing drone strikes and things like that. And unfortunately, and then from there, I feel like it became. I'll never forget the first time I saw like a drone that someone was just using with a remote control, and I just remember thinking it was the coolest thing I ever saw. So with that said, you mentioned already a couple of these things, but there's so many industries it seems that are benefiting from the use of drones, like agriculture, real estate, delivery. Even I remember hearing how Amazon was going to launch, or maybe still is working on launching a delivery program. What would you say are some of the biggest opportunities that are out there in the drone market right now?
There's so much. I mean, really, any and all of them are just massive. If we look at like the most crowded sector, or the thing that's got the most competitive market, is probably in real estate photography, doing images for houses and real estate. And that is definitely the most competitive one out there. But the cool thing about it, even in the most competitive industry, it's only 7 to 9% saturated, depending which report you read. So if you parlay that over to any other business, and to have over 90% of the marketplace completely wide open, I mean, that would be a dream for any other industry. And, and that's where we are with that right now. And we kind of classify, we have like beginner, intermediate, advanced, and really advanced business models for people to pursue and go after. And of course, number one part of that is the complexity and the difficulty and what's involved, but also the cost. There's a big difference if you're doing a FLIR stack inspection for an oil refinery, and the equipment you need for that and the skill you need for that and the insurance and everything. Because by the time you get the sensors and drones and everything you would need to do a FLIR stack inspection, you're probably looking at around $300,000 in the drone that you would outfit for that. And anytime you do anything professionally, you've got to have a backup. So, you're looking at a good $600,000 to $700,000 in equipment before you could even think about breaking into that inspection area. But on the flip side of that, you look at something like real estate, and you could get started with a $1,000 drone. We have people that are making more money flying a drone just doing real estate, flying for as a captain for United or Delta or American Airlines. It's pretty nuts. In fact, the FAA released a white paper last year or a couple of years ago, and they listed out that, unmanned aerial aircraft, your dream job of the future, talking about piloting, which is kind of cool. And to your point, yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff going on with delivery. Walmart just launched, about 2 months ago, they launched their delivery program in 2 different cities. And so right now, if you're fortunate enough to be in one of those cities, then you get free delivery on anything you order on Walmart that's up to 8 pounds. And as long as you're within 2 miles of that Walmart, then you get free delivery in less than 30 minutes.
Yeah, so cool. It's very, when you watch Back to the Future and you see flying cars and all these things, like that's one of those things where you're like, okay, the future is here. You're to see the drone just stop and as it's approaching the front door, drop the package and fly away. And it's amazing that time it's not that far away, or it's happening right now. So let's say somebody is listening to this podcast here today and they're really interested in getting started. I imagine you don't just buy a drone and then go out and start a business right away. What does that look like? What do you recommend for somebody who's just starting out, but with the idea that they potentially might want to get into business?
First thing is, these are aircraft operating in national airspace, so it is a highly regulated industry. So the first thing you have to do is get your FAA Part 107, which is essentially a license to operate a drone commercially. So that's the first thing that they need to do if they're going to operate, the drone commercially and get paid for it. After that, decide on which drone they're going to get, and then decide on which vertical market they're going to go into. And that's the one thing where I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle, is because there's over 300 different ones and they're all pretty sexy. The problem is that people want to do 10 things at once and start all 10, and they don't get the traction or the results they want. So my recommendation would be to just pick one and just go into that and really focus on that, and then you can blow it up. And then if they wanted to get more training and stuff, we do additional trainings. We have a little 2-hour kind of intro training that's free, and then we have a 3-day immersive training that people can go to, and we do 3 full days. It's not like an hour or 2 a day. It's like full 8, 9, sometimes 10-hour days. They're live and with questions and stuff. And so that's a good way for people to get, they're just kind of looking into it or exploring around. That would be kind of the path that I would look at, is, first get licensed and then decide on your drone, and then the industry, and just pick one.
Is there a way to just get better at using the drone? I mean, is there, do you say, hey, I really think you should be using the drone and just practicing, or whatever you want to call it, training yourself to get more skilled with using it before they actually take the step into doing business?
The crazy part is, and if you've never flown a drone, or at least one of these good prosumer drones, then it's going to be hard for people to comprehend this. But these are AI in the sky, and there are so many sensors and so many computers, just like a modern fighter jet. And the drones are easier to fly and harder to crash than ever before in history. So it's the amount of time that it takes to fly and get good enough to fly professionally, you can literally do, and for some of the what I call the low-hanging fruit, some of the simpler, fastest paths to cash when doing stuff, things like real estate or aerial imagery, or even something that's a little more intermediate, like hotels and resorts and stuff like that. You can literally learn to do that in probably less than an hour of flying, because of all the systems and all the AI that's there. For some of these advanced shots that we would need to get for doing cinematography or videography, there are built-in real-time AI learning that's on the drones. And essentially all you do is highlight the subject, press the button, and the drone does essentially all the work for you, which blows most people's minds. And the other big thing too, which I think is super important, is the way that people present the value that they're adding to their clients. Because a lot of clients, and one of the reasons the opportunity is so big is that a lot of clients don't even know that they can use the services or how it would benefit them. Like, we talk to companies where they use inspections, and some of them know that they're going to be using drones, but they don't really understand how and the benefits and stuff like that. And it blows my mind that we're not using drones in all inspection areas. Last year there were over 300 fatalities with inspections, and these are across cell towers, wind farms, bridges, dams, power lines, and 82% of those fatalities were just a routine inspection a drone could easily do, which is nuts. But again, it's a disruptive industry. Nobody is really doing it in scale yet, so everybody's a little hesitant to do it. But I think the big part of that is educating the marketplace, and it's kind of that proverbial elevator pitch, right? Like if you get on the elevator and you've got your little drone shirt on and it says "Cool Guys Drone Services," and then somebody gets in the elevator with you, and then he reads your shirt and goes, "Oh, Cool Guy Aerial Services, what do you do?" And this guy could be the CEO or the person in charge of inspections for a wind farm or for GE or something. And most people say, "Oh, well, I fly drones. It shoots in 8K, and I've got this camera, and I get pictures and videos and all that." And he's like, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I got my nephew a drone for Christmas," and that's it. And it's really about positioning, because really, what do we add value to? So if we rewind the tape and we do that same elevator pitch again, and he says, "Oh, what do you do?" And say, "Oh, well, I help companies save money, get more clients, introduce efficiencies, and impress everyone they know." And then that's a different positioning, and then it usually then leads the conversation. "Oh, well, how do you do that?" Or what do you do? And then you can get into more of the details of it. But that's a part where I think a lot of people, they get so caught up on the tech instead of the results. And most of the clients don't really care that much about the tech, and that you do as a drone pilot. You care about all the cool stuff on there, but the client just cares about the result that you're going to get them. In the case of the golf course, that you're going to save them from having any kind of infections or disease, or reduce that, and then save them a couple $100,000 a year, which they can take back to the board, makes them look like a hero. All those things, thinking about it from that position.
You mentioned a commercial drone license. What does that entail?
It's actually, I don't want to say it's easy. It's simple, not necessarily easy. So right now it's just a written test. You do it with the FAA. It's actually, you have to go to a testing center in person and take the test. It's a 60-question test, and it's multiple choice answer. You got 3, A, B, or C on every one. But it is about airspace, weather. Some of the stuff is applicable to what you'll experience in a real world flying a drone. Most of it isn't. And this was just kind of the FAA's first stab at getting, something that we had that was a structured system for getting it. So there's no proficiency test, meaning no flight test or anything like that. So you can be commercially licensed and not even have a drone or know how to fly it at all. But it's just a written test. And when I say it's simple, the process is simple and all that. But if you're not used to taking tests, you're going to probably want to study for somewhere between 12 and 20 hours before taking the test. Is probably the best advice I could give people. And what I would recommend doing is not spread that out. Do 3 or 4 hours a day, 3 or 4 days before you take your test, and that'll be fine to get you through it.
When it comes to profitability or just realistic expectations, well, one, what is a realistic expectation for someone, whether it's a side hustle or full-time business, and what are some of the more profitable areas where some new drone business owners should look to?
Well, I think that, as far, it depends on everybody, right? Like, your work ethic and how hard you're going to go out there, and do it. What I can share with you is, like, when we first started our network, we did a beta program. We got a handful of people, and I had 3 criteria for everybody that got in a beta program. They couldn't have any drone experience, meaning they've never flown a drone, didn't know how to fly it, because I thought that'd be an unfair advantage if they knew how to fly. They couldn't have any photography or videography experience, because again, I thought that'd be an unfair advantage. And they couldn't have any successful entrepreneurial experience. And the way I define that is they could have never netted more than $42,500 a year net revenue. And some of these guys, they had plumbing businesses or HVAC businesses, and they would do almost $1 million in gross sales, but after taxes and expenses and payroll and everything, net revenue was 38,000, 40 grand, stuff like that. So anyway, we put these guys in. We gave them a roadmap and a particular plan to follow, and the goal was to get them from 0 to 6 figures in 12 months. And all of them were doing this part-time, which really worried me in the beginning. We had one guy that did it full-time. All the other ones had full-time jobs or their own existing business already, and they were doing this, kind of on the side. And the good news was they all hit the number at the end of that year. They all surpassed the 6-figure mark, and then we launched our network after that. And we've had people that have made $250,000 in their first 5 weeks, and then we've had people that have made absolutely nothing in their first year. It's just kind of like the gym membership. Just because you join a gym doesn't mean you're going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It seems that there's obviously and I'll get to this in a second, the initial investment, but it seems like the overhead would be fairly low. Like once you have the actual, so when you were talking about that, net revenue, and you also mentioned that there's the investment of potentially $750,000 into certain areas. What is a realistic initial investment for a beginner?
So for 95% of everything that everyone would get started with, you can do with literally $1,000 drone. Well, let's call it a $1,500 drone because you're going to want to get extra batteries in the case and all that. So you're going to be about $1,500 in. And that will get you, that you can cover probably 95% of the stuff that most people would. And you could easily build multiple divisions in your drone business, generating over 6 figures, with that drone alone, and the stuff that it can do. The other expenses you would have would be video editing and photo editing, which again, nowadays that's come way down. So that's minimal. And again, your clients are essentially paying for this because you're only doing that when you have a paid shoot and you're delivering it for your client. And then where the expense starts to really jump up dramatically is when you get into some of the more advanced marketplaces and you start getting into some of the higher end inspections. You start introducing thermal, or you start getting into some of these bigger, heavy lifted drones, or you get into agriculture where you're using seeding drones and spraying drones and pesticide drones and stuff like that. Then, equipment wise, it's going to jump up, and not only on the hardware side, but the software side. So what we recommend is everyone in our network that they, go out and build their first, 6-figure or $250,000 worth of revenue before they look at jumping into any of the intermediate, vertical markets, because there's so much opportunity and it's so much easier. And again, the barrier to entry is so much less as far as investment. But long way to answer your question, at probably around the $1,500 mark is really what you're looking at. And then add in, if you're just brand new getting started, add in a little extra for, your business cards, flyers, some of if you're going to get an LLC, stuff like that, just basic business expenses.
With that said, I mean, the barrier to entry being so low as far as the initial investment, where do you see these new business owners stand out? And with that said, maybe you could offer a little bit as to, is the true opportunity here? How much of it is that not a lot of people are doing this versus people figuring out a formula to actually make it successful?
I think it's both. We have people that come join our network that have kind of tried to do it on their own, and they're having a hard time because it's kind of like running east looking for a sunset, right? It's just they're kind of doing all the wrong things at the wrong times, and like the elevator pitch example I gave you, they're just not presenting themselves to the marketplace right. So that's a big part of it. But the other biggest part is just simple supply and demand. I mean, right now we've got the demand is way up here and the supply is way down here. It's slowly catching up, but I mean, right now, like I tell you, can suck and do well in this industry for a short time, not much longer. And I don't recommend anyone sucks. I think they should try their best to perfect their craft and be the best they can be. But we're in this unique opportunity because it's so new. Some of the things, like there are some basic general rules of cinematography with the drone. Like one of the rules is you never want to see the shadow of the drone in your shot when you're flying. But there are shots, I haven't seen any recently in movies, But in TV, like Discovery Channel, they have drone pilots on site, and these are, national television programs, and these guys are breaking all these rules that would normally be totally unacceptable, and they will be unacceptable in the next year or two, maybe three. But we've got about a 3-year max, maybe a year and a half gap before all this kind of levels out. And then it's going to be like every other business. You can still do it. Like if you want to open a pizza shop in New York, you can do it, but it's a whole lot harder than if you were the first or second pizza shop that ever opened in New York, right? To be successful. So I think that's really where the biggest opportunity is. And that's one of the exciting things, because once you get in your area, or whatever industry that you're working in, you quickly become known as the drone expert, because there just aren't many people doing it, and that's where the great opportunity really lies.
Interesting. So where does your business meet that? I imagine because it sounds like you've trained thousands of people, and to be honest, when I first read that, I thought, okay, you're going to sit somebody down with the controls of this thing, and it sounds like from what you've told us, that's not as much. So I'm thinking now the training is very much more about the actual business, and the elevator pitch you talked about, all the things you need to do in the beginning. What does that look like for somebody who wants to get off on the right path, and invest some money in your services, and how you help them through that?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we do is we focus on the business side, and the drones. Of course, the flying, because I have a training program to get people ready for the 107, so they can pass their 107 test. They can fly legally. We have all the training that goes around that, and then we have these, probably our biggest the biggest benefit we have. We call them business plans because they're kind of real world business plans, but they're really roadmaps. So these are kind of identifying the low hanging fruit opportunities, and then exactly what you would need to do. And we provide everything for that. So it would be like who the target market is. We provide scripts, all promo videos, all the flyers and brochures, all the support documents, presentations if it's applicable, and pricing and how you deliver everything, how you fly the drone, all the settings for the drone, all the settings for everything. And this is, we roll this out in different vertical markets for people. And we've got 5 different business plans, these complete business plans. And anybody that joins our network can pick any one of those business plans up and just follow it to a T and have some pretty remarkable success with it, if they're willing to put in the effort. And of course, I can't make any income claims, but on average, that's what we see. We see people that are easily building 6-figure businesses with just one of those business plans rolling across it. And then we also have other opportunities for flight instructor certifications. Right now we've certified more flight instructors than anyone else in the world. And these people train people how to fly drones, and also how to prepare for their 107 test for people that want to have the hands-on. And that's also another revenue stream for these guys, where they can make up to $5,000 a day training people to fly. There's lots of different opportunities for people that are in the network, and depending on what they want to do. Some people are really into animal conservation, or some people are really into the energy sector, or some people are really into agriculture, or people into cinematography. We have people that do all kinds of stuff there, and other people that do search and rescue and construction. There's we can do cut and fill analysis for construction projects, and time lapse, and 3D and 4D mapping. There's all kinds of amazing things that we can do. We have one guy that all he does is the aerial funerals. He's built up a pretty impressive business with that in just his little town in a pretty short amount of time.
Wow. I mean, I guess it's no different from a lot of different areas, like the finding a niche, and then word of mouth can kind of play on your side there. Is there any areas where you feel like haven't been tapped into, or you feel that the future holds for drones, that you, obviously someone who's extremely involved in the space, what things might look like, anything that's on the horizon where you're like, you really just kind of, you're expecting there to be an explosion, or just more involvement in the drone business?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be thousands of different vertical markets and stuff that you or I have never even thought about yet. Right now it's just at 300, but growing. But the future, they're calling it the low altitude economy, which is basically 400 feet and below. I sit at the board at NASA at UTAM, which is the Unmanned Traffic Management. And really the last decade, we've really been focusing on how we can integrate all of these drones safely, number one, and then without creating a bunch of visual pollution or noise pollution as all these delivery drones are going around, as Uber Air launches. We just had China just launched, they're beta testing in 2 cities now in China, their air taxi systems, which are like the Jetsons, right? These are autonomously flown big drones that carry people in them. And Uber Air has been investing really heavily for the last 8 years in their Uber Air division. And so it'll be neat to see that growing. They've gotten approvals and some other stuff that's happened that's going to move that forward. So the future is going to be pretty crazy. It is going to be like the Jetsons. We're going to have little drones flying around, big drones flying around. And a lot of this is going to be autonomous. For a lot of our guys and people that own drone businesses, the flying the drones is going to shift. And like the technology is actually available right now, but the regulatory side is kind of the hang up. But what's going to happen is these drones will basically be like sprinkler systems. They'll pop out of the ground off their self-charging dock and they'll go fly their mission, map out the crop or the golf course or the inspection that they're assigned to do. They'll come back, they'll land on their self-charging dock, automatically upload the data. That data will be processed and calculated and then disseminated out to other drones. In the case of agriculture, then it'll go out to a spot spraying drone, a pesticide drone, a seeding drone, and then to the GPS guided tractors. And the roles of the drone company owners are going to switch from actually flying the drones to, basically identifying, customizing, and setting up and maintaining these drone systems for all these different companies and stuff. So it's going to be it's a pretty amazing future of what's going to happen, and I think it's going to take longer because of the regulatory side than the technology side, because these things are AI in the sky, and they're just the development and what we're seeing on them is just getting crazy. But I see it's kind of like dog years. What I would expect to take a year or two is literally taking months. And it just keeps getting faster and faster and better and better. And
that's okay. I was more interested if you saw that, and it sounds like there could be potentially opportunities that are going to be more, because right now people can invest in AI. They say, oh, wow, this is really going to be part of our future. Is there some way I can get involved passively, obviously?
Yeah. And there are some companies that I'm invested in, and they've done really well. But again, and a lot of these are really based on the military side and military contracts, which those and that aren't granted yet. But the potential of these being granted, if they are granted, then great, it's going to go amazing. And if they're not, then going to go nowhere.
Very cool. All right, Damon, we're just about out of time here. This was really great, really eye-opening and very interesting. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Agent of Wealth podcast. And it was really fun speaking with you about all these topics. But before we go, is there a place where our listeners can find you, get in touch with you and learn more?
Yeah, probably check out Drone Command Live, dronecommandlive.com. And that's our 3-day immersion training. Or you can just look up the Drone Boss. You can Google that or YouTube or thedroneboss.com, and you can see some of the other stuff that we've got to offer. And yeah, I'd love to help people, educate them and take them, into the journey of the drone space and the opportunity that's there if it's something that's interesting to them.
Great. Well, we'll include those resources in the section of the show notes for sure. Thanks again, Damon. And until next time, thanks everyone for joining us today.
Don't forget to follow the Agent of Wealth on the platform you listen from and leave us a review of the show. We're currently accepting new clients, and if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one consultation with our advisors, please do so at bautisfinancial.com/call.
Thank you for listening to the Agent of Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Bautis Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial planning and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investments and financial planning.